again, I love reaching across the world here. I'm in Canada and I'm reaching across to Scotland. I have Douglas T. Stewart from BMX Bandits.
Hello.
Amazing, huge band, cult band, some have said. Um, Been around for decades, Douglas.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for hopping on, and what a musical catalog you have, I must say.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, hopping, that's very appropriate for us because their current singles, Hop, Skip, Jump for Your Love. And I hopped over for your love.
Love it. And thanks so much. I really appreciate. I feel spoiled a bit getting to talk to you. So I tend to like to start, Douglas, kind of like at your beginnings of, your kind of origin story around music. And like, what are your earliest recollections of when music was going to be something that you were not going to be able to escape, that it had to be something that was going to be a part of you? Do you remember those early recollections of when music
Yeah,
just was like, wow?
really early on, there was the moon landings footage on the BBC. And I mean, I was pretty young at that time. And in between bits of the live moon landing footage on the BBC, they were showing a serial of I think it was a French and German production of The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe,
Hmm.
and it's dubbed into English. And what we had to do then was, it wasn't like we just could take the talking out and put in new English language talking. We had to take the whole soundtrack out. So it meant there had to be a new musical soundtrack.
Right.
And so there was a unique music soundtrack made for this show. And the music of that um, just really, really hit me at that time, even though I was
Hmm.
so young.
Right.
Um, I'll send over details about the track just in case that's useful. But yeah, The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, the soundtrack to that adaptation. And now when I listen to it as an adult, I can sort of hear things like qualities of Brian Wilson, Pet Sounds era, Serge Gainsbourg, Ennio Morricone, all in the
Right.
music for this TV show. And that
Wow.
was a big thing. And the other thing, my dad wasn't a performer or show off at all. He used to sing a Rodney Tune song to my mum over the kitchen table. The
Hmm.
song Jean from the prime of Miss Jean Godey. He used to
Right.
sing that to my
Right.
mum, and that kind of filled me with wonder. And I think that was part of my journey of being obsessed by, I guess, particularly love songs. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many incredibly bad love songs, but there
True.
is, love is even a much greater and wider thing to explore and to try to understand in deep space to me. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I guess I've spent an awful lot of my life, obsessing over the idea of a great love song.
Right. Right. And I mean, just kind of going through some of your history, getting prepared for this talk with you. Um, you were surrounded by pretty amazing musicians at a very young age. I heard that you had met Norman Blake, of Teenage Fan Club, in elementary school or even prior to that.
Yeah, before that, there was a local church group that the kind of mothers of young children, toddlers, would go to. And Norman's a year younger than me, approximately a year
Mhm.
younger than me. And I remember watching him in this church hall. You get these kind of wooden benches where each individual seat can be flipped up and flipped down. And he was running
Right.
up and down, flip, 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 putting them all up. And then he'd run back the other way down, flip, 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 flip. And yeah, I always remembered him from that time. And I was one of those people that was very different as a child. You see photographs of me as a little boy and you go, "Oh, is that really the same person?" But Norman looked exactly like Norman. Even then, he had that very charming kind of grin that's very disarming.
Right.
And but we really got to know each other as teenagers.
Right.
But I
And
remember him a lot younger.
were those the times, like, when did you actually start writing your own music and wanting to perform it for people? Do you remember those beginning
The,
times of those initial? Because I know that you started a band called Pretty Flowers in
yeah,
82, 83, and that was
yeah.
your first band. Um, how did all that kind of come to be, and how did you start writing songs? Like,
Well,
you know,
I
yeah.
I used to write little plays and little
Hmm.
skits, and nonsense songs and get sent round elementary school. And Norman was in the class below, so I would get sent into his class and they go, "We've got Douglas Stewart in to sing some of his nonsense songs and do a little skit for us with a couple of his friends." And so I would do that. So I was, even then, I was thinking about melody, and they didn't have any instrumentation, but they had melodies, and little characters in them and things. And then I'd fallen for Frances McKee, who went on to be in the Vaselines. And I wanted to spend as much time as I could hanging out with Frances. And she said one day, "Oh, I really wish I could be in a group. I think it'd be great to be in a group." And I thought, I could form a group. I could form a group with like Norman and Sean, because they're, really musically talented. And also, I bet we would be really good. That kind of arrogance of youth. I couldn't conceive the notion that we wouldn't be good. I was just, it was not just based on myself, it was based on me plus Francis.
The collaborations of all these Norman amazing.
Sean. Yeah. And another friend called Hugh McLaughlin, who's a big part of that as well. I just went, well, these personalities, that's almost sounds like my favourite group of all time. Right. And then Frances, after a while, left to form a group with her new boyfriend, Eugene Kelly, who, I love Eugene, and he's been a BMX Bandit. And they were the Vaselines. And so the BMX Bandits started, I guess, kind of slightly born out of heartbreak. It wasn't the kind of heartbreak that was going to kill you, but, I had a bunch of songs, and Sean Dixon, who went on to be in the Soup Dragon, says, let's start a new band to do your new songs, Douglas. And we came up with the name BMX Bandits, and then
that's pretty cool.
That's how it all started.
Wow. And when did you first get a sense that these songs, I think you said nonsense songs that you were writing, or when did you start to feel like, okay, there's something here, there's something that I have in these whimsical lyrics, or these, playful melodies that I'm introducing? When did you start to realize that, okay, this could work out?
Well, the funny thing is, like a lot of entertainers, and I'm actually quite an introverted person in a lot of ways, and performing and singing songs and stuff like that is like my way of making a connection that, other people, can maybe do normally and easily. But for me, I found it a bit harder, and I found it sometimes, I guess, I was a bit fearful of certain kind of social stuff like that. It's not that I don't like people, I really love people. And my teacher, one of my elementary teachers, had a talent contest. And every week in the class, and if you won, you were back on next week. And if you won, you were back on next week. And I'm near at the end of the alphabet, and I knew eventually I was going to have to do something, and I was so scared of it. And, my sister could tell I was preoccupied with my older sister, and said, "But Douglas, you're always coming up with all these little things in the house, just performing for a house. Put some of that stuff together, like a little act, and it'll be a hit." And that's what I did, and I won every week until we moved class. And at every playtime, I would be put up in the school wall, and I'd be asked to perform like songs for other kind of kids at school. I would suddenly be invited to all the birthday parties. So I think at that point, even I went, "Well, this is something I can do." I found it might be difficult because I wasn't like a lot of typical boys. I wasn't into, going about in my bike or playing soccer or stuff like that. So I found, wait a minute, this is a way that I can cut out all that stuff that people usually have to do.
Right.
And try and make connections in a different way.
And like, Douglas, you say this introverted part of you, like, how do you battle that to then be able to just go and open your, because writing songs and lyrics, it's a personal thing, standing up in front of a bunch of people and then delivering it, all the eyes on you. How did you combat that at the start of your career musically? Having those kind of two juxtapositions, like battling with each other. What were your techniques to kind of overcome?
It's a little bit like a kind of superpower in a way. And I don't mean, to make it over melodramatic, but it is. I think a lot of people who in some way are maybe kind of neurodiverse, which I think, I certainly would be categorized by that now. Back then, I wouldn't be because people didn't talk in those ways. But it was like that thing of finding a mode, as you say. It's almost like having a super, Peter Parker is a bit of a kind of dweeb and all that sort of thing. But Spider-Man's the coolest guy around, save people's lives. And and kiss and can, get the girl of his dreams, which, Peter wouldn't easily. And I think it's a bit like that. I think it's like that for a lot of performers, And then after the show's done, I remember we were touring with Shonen Knife in the 1990s. I mean, a great band. And when we'd nights off, everybody would be getting together with guitars and in the rooms and having a party. And I would always be the first to go back to my room and, want to read my book or watch an Agatha Christie mystery that was on television. And, the Shonen Knife girls would be saying, but he's so outgoing on stage. But, he's not, it's not like I wouldn't join in sing-alongs, but wouldn't be me with the leading all that stuff. And I don't drink alcohol. I haven't drank alcohol as an adult. I've never been interested in things like recreational drugs. So, if people were partying hard, that wasn't really my thing. I think for me, and it still is, it's all about a way of trying to make connection with other human beings. And a connection that can go really quite deep, and also can go quite deep with people I've never even met. Or even people like yourself, people will say, well, I've been listening and enjoying your music for all these years. And to me, it's like, well, we formed a relationship and I didn't even know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for a big part of my life, and most of my relationships, I think have come out of that as well. When I say relationships, I don't mean just my friendships, like my romantic relationships.
For sure. So if I'm getting you right, it was kind of a persona that you created for your musical side of things.
Yeah, but
to be able to. Yeah.
It's like Spider-Man is Peter Parker, Superman is Clark Kent. It is me. Yeah. It's not a kid on one. And also, as the thing you were saying about you put yourself in kind of vulnerable position.
Yeah.
And it's I've got there's a BMX Bandits song which the lyric is, I'm going to sing the things that I can't say. And it's that is a big part of it. It's like I can express myself in this language more easily than I can, in just one-to-one in a room or in a group in a room. And, I definitely know that amongst a lot of my friends who write songs, Norman, for instance, who, was like one of my brothers, I don't have blood brothers, but I've got brothers in pop, would kind of go, I can't believe you're saying this in a song. You're putting yourself in such, a kind of an open sort of place. And, but trying to do it with humor, so things like Serious Drugs is a very personal song about being on medication, antidepressants, and a kind of funny situation where the girl I was seeing started off saying, you don't need to read these tablets, you need my love to make you feel better. Cut to a month later and she said, I think you need some stronger tablets. And I thought, that's kind of funny, but it's also kind of tragic and sad. And I always want even the songs that kind of come out of some sort of heart to have some sort of humor or some sort of light, some sort of hope in them, so they don't become kind of alienating. I think sometimes if things are overly earnest, it can be quite alienating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was reading that your lyrics and listening to it as well, I see these two, like this poppy sunshiny, but there's this undertone too that gets into quite serious themes or topics, but it is, like you're saying, very whimsical and a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's still there. I mean, that underbelly exists.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you too, Douglas, like how does longevity, like you've been in making albums, your 12th album is about to come out here and we'll talk about that in a minute. What's the longevity? Like, how do you maintain that over all these decades of putting records out and shows and good reviews, bad reviews. Like it's a roller coaster ride being a musician.
Yeah.
How did BMX Bandits have that longevity that still exists to this day?
I think one of the things is quite early on, it became obvious that people were going to be changing in the band. Certainly, because Sean had all this success with the Soup Dragons, and he quite rightly had to go and explore that. And then Norman came in, who I'd worked with before, and then he had all the success, so he had to kind of move on as well. And these people come back into the picture at different times, and that's always been the thing. So I've kind of often said that, being expanded is like an extended family. It's a bit like, the Muppet Show or something, and I'm Kermit the Frog, I'm the guy at the centre, and these people kind of come in and, we have some fun and do some stuff and have some adventures together. And then it moves on, but, it's still being expanded. It still has the same heart. And I think that can be really good because it brings new colours into the band, and it can be a new, female voice that comes in, or a new collaborator who I'm writing with who comes in, and I suddenly go, wait a minute, listening to their music, there's suddenly a bunch of new colours. Or I can really, when Chloe, who was my partner, they joined in Bandits, it was like I could imagine her singing lines that I would never sing. I'd go, oh, wow, that would sound really good in her voice, and I know she could carry that off in a way I feel like I wouldn't. And so that's always kind of kept things fresh. And for a lot of bands, keeping things fresh is almost like the worst thing almost you can do career-wise, because people want what they already know. But a lot of BMX Bandits bands, and it's never really been a career. At one point, I think people thought, well, there's potential here for this to happen in a big, big way. I think a lot of people say to me things like, oh, when I got this record, I didn't know what to expect, and I was really sort of surprised by it, and I didn't like it that much. But now it's my favourite, or now it's one of my favourite BMX Bandits albums, because I trust BMX Bandits. So I went back and listened again and again, and now you've won me over again. And I think that's a really fortunate thing. Well, there's some bands, if they don't come up with what everybody's expecting, it's like almost game over. But we don't have that pressure because there's not all these people relying on us to pay every hour wage. It's just us,
That's great. So here you are on the eve of your newest record, Dreamers on the Run, coming out April 26th.
Yeah.
I read that this album has been in the works for a while. Is that accurate?
It is. It's not been getting recorded for a while. It's not like we started recording it around 10 years. 10 years ago, I had the idea for this record, and I knew it was going to be something I wanted to be musically quite ambitious with, quite big arrangements and stuff like that. And then I kind of got I guess pretty ill in my head and in my body, and it just meant I wasn't going to have the strength or ability to kind of really work on this project. But I had certain songs partially written or even completely written that are on the album now. Some songs weren't written then, but I before I start a new album, pretty much since the album My Chain onwards in particular, I visualise what that world is of that album. Before even usually a song's written, or maybe there's one song kind of partially written, it's almost like I try and visualise the world that I see these songs existing in. So it's almost like I've got the concept for it. I've got the idea. It's not like a contrived concept album like, some prog rock kind of thing or something.
Right.
But I just know the kind of feel and the kind of sounds and emotions and stuff I want to know. I feel the messages are of that album. And so I had all of that, and then I'd been working on a soundtrack, which was our previous release for a film called Dreaded Light. And I was working with Andrew, and he'd all these skills that I thought, he's the guy that I should get on board and try and see, because I still was singing all these songs to myself,
Right.
And then he brought in musical ideas, and we completed our songs together and things like that. And Dreamers on the Run has now come to life.
Amazing. And now that you have a bit of distance from it, what how would you describe this new record that's about to drop? Like with that perspective of a little bit of the timeline of it, and now kind of it's done. It's kind of in its package. What's your perspective on this latest record?
Well, it's an interesting one because I think it's actually more timely than it would have been 10 years ago. I think after COVID and a bunch of kind of political stuff that's happened, in the UK and the States in particular, that a lot of people who didn't used to particularly feel like outsiders or didn't particularly feel insecure and frightened of life and the world they were living in, suddenly actually now feel much more like they are outsiders. The kind of main theme of this album, or one of the main themes of this album, was kind of living a kind of dual life, a kind of life of dreams where you can feel safe with someone you love or people you love, perhaps your family or whatever, and friends, and this but trying to navigate the real world at the same time, and escaping into this other world. And I think most of my life I felt a little bit like I've been a dreamer on the run. And so that was the notion. And it actually I saw this animation about these two lovers done by the French cartoonist Penny. And it was all these little clips of these little lovers running down the bottom of the screen with this beautiful monochrome being played. And they were running past like atomic bombs going off and people starving and, tanks, firing missiles at each other and all like horror stuff. And these two little lovers continually just like on the run. And I saw that in Tokyo in, I think, the end of the 1990s, and I thought, there's an idea there. These are like lovers in the run, but I can relate to this, and I think I would maybe make it dreamers in the run. And then I came back to about 2014 and actually thought, let's begin that idea. And then things went strange. But I think it's more timely now.
Yeah. Well, I've been fortunate enough to get a track, the copy, so I can listen to it before we chatted, and it is a really strong record. And it's not just one track, two tracks, but there's like a handful of really solid tracks, and the flow of it is just really wonderful, Douglas. It's just, it's so great to have a new BMX Bandits album out, and it's a really strong record. This one coming in April.
Thank you.
Kind of as we wrap up here, Douglas, what's 2024 hold for you? What's musically? So the record's going to be coming out. What else can fans look forward to?
Well, we are going to try and do more live shows. Unfortunately, the problem of not having a lot of money behind us is it's sometimes very difficult for us physically to get to a lot of the places we wish we could get to.
Right.
But, I'm hoping that we might try and do some sort of show that can perhaps be filmed in some sort of way. Like a one-off special show with a whole bunch of strings and stuff.
Right.
That might not actually, it might end up in 2025 by the time we get back together, but we're going to be doing shows. We're a 4-piece band just now, and the band feels really, really great. People are saying that they really love it. And also the other big thing in my life, currently is Chloe and I have a 14-month-old baby girl just now, so that's a big part, that's a big part of your life,
They take a lot of care and focus for sure. Yeah,
my other son's 30 this year, so it's a big.
Wow, you are a busy man.
Yeah, I know.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, congratulations on your latest beautiful child, and congratulations on this record. BMX Bandits' latest, again, April 26th, Dreamers on the Run. This has been a really, really cool talk with you, Stuart. Douglas, I appreciate your words and your stories. They're just heartwarming, and all of my images of this conversation came true of your stories and how you were going to talk about them. So I really, really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate it. We never take it for granted, and we're really so grateful that people care enough to want to talk to us and to listen.
Love it. Love it. Take care.
Thank you.